Hello, my name is Warren Clements. I'm sitting here in the comfortable precincts of the Arts and Letters Club of Toronto. This is the club's library filled with books by club members past and present, including a few of mine. I've been writing for several decades now, 3 of them spent at the Globe and Mail newspaper in Toronto. After leaving the Globe, I started a small publishing firm called Nestlings Press, which specializes in humor and illustration, some of it by me, some of it by others. The verses today are all by me. The first batch will be from my latest book, Imaginary Pets of Famous People, with excellent caricatures drawn by Anthony Jenkins. The famous people exist, but the imaginary pets do not. I have invented the whole thing. Do not write to these famous people asking about their pets. They will not know what you are talking about. The second batch of verses will be based on Aesop's Fables, and I will get to those in a minute. For now, here are a few lines about a few famous people with imaginary pets. I hope you enjoy them. Brendan Behan. Brendan Behan, when in his cups, would rail against life's downs and ups. I had a cat that loved to roam. It ate me out of house and home. It brought home strays and had 5 litters. The house was full of mangy critters. What made the poet even sicker was when the feline found his liquor. Before he knew it, all was gone. The cat was stretched out on the lawn. So that was it. No pets for me. I came damn near sobriety. Harry and Meghan. Harry and Meghan sought a dog that was vegan, a request which they found sparked laughs at the pound. When the dog at last came, they were stuck for a name. Prince Harry, well versed, thought of Charles I, because each day the dog sped off and barked its head off. Meghan and Harry. Meghan and Harry ordered calamari, but when it was brought had a guilty second thought. Might our pet octopus be shocked at us, thinking our seafood means he'll be food? Laurel and Hardy. Stan Laurel was a nervous sort. A sneeze would bring the man up short. His partner Hardy was more brash, the kind who'd enter with a crash and wonder as he looked around just who had made that smashing sound. It happened that one summer day they came upon a winsome stray. Their hearts were melted by its eyes and by its vulnerable size. The dog was overjoyed at first, but soon enough the bubble burst. It's hard to know what irked it most. Stan Laurel seemed to see a ghost at every turn and shriek and fret. No way to calm a nervous pet. While Hardy would collide with chairs and catch the canine unawares. He dropped each pan and smashed each pot until the small dog's nerves were shot. I thought those two made silent pics. There's nothing silent in these ticks. I'm frazzled and unsettled very. I'm off to find a monastery. Theodore Teddy Roosevelt. Roosevelt was known for killing creatures in ruthless hunts with nasty features, so you may perhaps be unaware that he gave his name to the teddy bear. He refused to shoot a bear tied to a tree, which earned him a lot of publicity. An entrepreneur made a cute stuffed bear and called it Teddy. It sold everywhere. But let us not get too sentimental. The way Roosevelt dealt with beasts was not gentle. If he had a pet, I doubt it would linger anywhere near his trigger finger. Ellen DeGeneres. Ellen DeGeneres voiced Dory the fish in Finding Nemo. Said Dory, "I wish I could somehow remember just what I said 2 minutes ago. It's left my head. I quickly forget everything that I'm thinking. My body swims, but my memory's sinking." DeGeneres loved that little Dory more than all the rest in the Nemo story. But cartoon pets exist on paper. They can't really swim or drool or caper. So Ellen thought, I'll get a fish, a live one that can splash and splish. And that was fine and dandy. Yet, she keeps forgetting to buy the pet. Neil Young. Neil Young has never sung about his pet eagle Unity. What a missed opportunity. W.C. Fields. When W.C. gave up water for liquor, He'd watch his pet fish as they'd sparkle and flicker in bowls filled with only the best H2O, while he drank like a fish, downing schnapps or Pernod. He'd sometimes play golf on a course with a friend, but only because he could drink at the end, or during. A pet St. Bernard he named Laddie would carry a small cask of rum as his caddy. Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan bought a cat which stalked his neighborhood and yowled and fought and robbed. In short, it was no good. The neighbors all complained. "There's no rule he won't flout. You've got to bell that cat, at least we'll know he's out." But Dylan shook his head and softly mumbled, "Well, I am a Nobel laureate, so Mittens gets no bell." Samuel Beckett. The cat that Samuel Beckett kept clawed so much stuff the playwright wept. Whatever valuables belonged to Beckett, the cat would choose the rarest and wreck it. The cat's destruction grew so expensive that Beckett was placed on the defensive. He had to seek work in a restaurant, where they said, "So, what's the job you want?" "I'll wash the dishes and mop the floors, or stand out front and open the doors, but a server's job I'd end up hating. After writing Godot, I've no taste for waiting." Henri Matisse. Henri Matisse was fond of geese, as opposed to Monet, who would shoo them away. Pierre-Auguste Renoir let them visit the Loire, but Georges Seurat was heard to say, "Bah!" Mark Twain. Mark Twain one day confided that when it came to pets he was undecided. He could take a hippo on the Mississippi, or a guppy on the Mississippi. He could escort a carp on the Mississarp, or a whippet on the Mississippi. In the end he settled on a snake's hissing, as they explored the Missississing. A wiser but sadder man, he had become an adder man. Herman Melville. It sounds like a most improbable tale, but Herman Melville was stalked by a whale. He'd dart down streets and climb a stair. Without exception, the whale was there. "What rough, rude beast confronts me here?" cried Melville with a hint of fear. "Did not in Moby Dick you see whales treated with great majesty?" The stalker nodded and allowed the book had done his species proud. The trouble was the captain's name. "What, Ahab? Is that cause for blame?" The whale said, "Yes, it's grounds for rue, for Ahab is my first name too. I, Ahab Whale, have borne the brunt of Moby Dick's immense affront. Since publication I can tell my friends have made my life a hell. How's your obsession?" they all shout. "Seen any great white whales about? Your peg leg's missing, where'd it go? Got any tantrums left to throw?" It's got so I am shunned and mocked, and pretty much as whale defrocked. I therefore come with this petition. Whenever comes the next edition, please call the captain something new. Lysander, or Bartholomew, or Bob, or Biff, or Hank, or Guy, but let that name of Ahab die. Though Melville tried to make the change, his publishers declared it strange. "Besides, your book's not selling well. Some day, perhaps, but who can tell?" So if you're reading Moby Dick and find the captain's name is Rick, you'll know at last a humble whale has managed to revise the tale. P.G. Wodehouse. At times, P.G. Wodehouse would roll up his sleeves and dash off a few thousand words about Jeeves. His writing was messy, in need of a blotter, and that is why Wodehouse adopted an otter. It wasn't ideal, since the average otter is happiest only when splashing in water, and water and paper don't go well together. Try leaving a newspaper out in bad weather. He tried, though. The otter would swim in a barrel placed next to the desk, which was really a carrel. When Wodehouse's pen meant the page needed blotting, he'd call on the otter, who'd leave off his otting and let Wodehouse blot his damp page on its fur, which made it still damper, twice damp as it were. "If only," said Wodehouse, "the otter were dry." But otters deprived of their water soon cry, and that made the otter's fur damper than ever. "Turns out," Wodehouse said, "my great plan wasn't clever." The otter went back to the pet store in haste. "I'm sorry," said Wodehouse, "it's not to my taste." And now a tame spaniel sits by while he writes, blue splotches adjoining its blacks and its whites. The next verses are also about animals, but they are creatures in the wild. They are based on Aesop's Fables. Now, nobody knows much about Aesop, except he's supposed to have lived about 25 centuries ago. Some of the fables were written before or after Aesop lived, but it doesn't matter. It's a nice catch-all for his stories. Tales of foxes, crows, lions, lambs, turtles, hares, and other stand-ins for humans. They seek to instruct as well as to amuse, which explains why most of them end with a moral. So, if Aesop will forgive me, here are a few of my rhymes based on his or someone else's work. The illustrations are by Anthony Jenkins and earlier classic illustrators. The Wolf and the Sheep. A wolf who fancied he was wise once donned a sheepskin to disguise his presence, for he sought to creep among a flock of tasty sheep. Things went so well he almost wept. He figured when the shepherd slept he'd pick the sheep off one by one and scarper by the rising sun. Alas for him, the shepherd sought some mutton for his stewing pot, and seized a sheep, the wolf in fact, to give the stew the tang it lacked. And by the time the truth sank in, the wolf had lost a double skin. You never know what end you'll meet when first you dabble in deceit. The Tortoise and the Hare. The tortoise grew tired of the hare's constant boasts. Your vanity makes you a joke on both coasts. The hare barely noticed the tortoise's put down, so Tortoise concluded he must put his foot down. You say you're the fastest of all of God's creatures, and all of the rest must look on from the bleachers? Well, I say you're under a sorry delusion. It's time your sad fantasy reached a conclusion. Let's set up a contest between you and me. You say you're the fastest? Well, buddy, we'll see. The rabbit guffawed, other animals too. You think that the one that can best me is you? You walk at a pace that would make a snail bored, for tortoise is backwards the same as toward. But friends egged him on, and at last he agreed. He hadn't a doubt that his speed would succeed. The race day arrived, and the creature set off. The hare left his rival to sputter and cough, since all that the tortoise could see was his dust. Now some individuals might have just cussed, but not this brave tortoise. He soldiered along, determined that somehow he'd prove the hare wrong. It's true that his chances looked slim at this stage. The hare takes a minute, the tortoise an age. But some folks are reckless and don't think ahead. The hare saw a field that would make a good bed. He knew he was winning, and therefore he chose to pull up halfway and lie down for a doze. He wasn't concerned that he'd sleep for too long. He knew he'd wake up in good time. He was wrong. The tortoise was slow, but the tortoise was steady. The finish line loomed. The sensation was heady. The crowd that had gathered erupted in cheers, which distantly tickled the dozing hare's ears. He woke and he ran, but his prize was disgrace. Being slow and being steady can win you the race. The Mice and the Weasels. The mice were deep into a war with weasels. Hoping they'd be more successful, they chose several mice as generals. And in a trice, those generals made horns and glued them to their heads, a rather crude device to mark them from the rest. The battle came, they did their best, but all the mice were driven back when weasels launched a strong attack. The mice escaped into their holes except the generals. Those souls could not fit through the holes because their outsized horns got stuck. This was a most unfortunate travail. The weasels caught them. End of tale. The moral, the vainglorious, will learn how short their story is. The Wolf and the Young Goat. A kid, too slow to join his flock, was halted by a wolf. He sought to stall the creature. Let us talk, kind sir. If I must die, I've got one wish, a ceremonial end. Please play the flute so I can dance. The wolf was touched. Okay, my friend, I'll play a tune and watch you prance. The music reached a nearby field where dogs were resting. They were quick to find the wolf and make him yield. How could I fall for such a trick? The wolf cried out while fleeing the pack. Comeuppance is a crashing bore. Don't let your concentration crack. Lose focus and you may lose more. The Crab and her Son. A crab was lecturing her son. You're always walking sideways. You'll be abused by everyone. They'll speak of you in snide ways. So just walk straight, and then you'll see the pride you'll feel is ample. Please, mother, do the walk for me. Walk straight as my example. Of course she couldn't, being a crab, for she walked sideways too. Where she had felt compelled to blab, she now would not say boo. For talk is cheap. When something counts, examples are worth every ounce.